Credits Roll.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 11 of No Credits Rolled. My name is Sam Whalen, your host. Today we're going to recap some of my personal highlights from Summer Games Fest and the other conferences. Of course, if you're in the gamer world, as we like to call it, us gamers, you probably have heard of some of the news from some of these conferences. We had some big announcements, some small announcements, but this is my favorite time of year when it comes to gaming news. I love watching these conferences. I love seeing people react to them. I like the big announcements, but then also some surprise indie games. It's a great time of year. It's like Christmas, but, for game announcements. But anyway, before we get started, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Spotify, Apple, anywhere you get your audio, we will be there for you. We're on TikTok and YouTube. We're doing video versions for the show now. So just search No Credits Rolled and you will find us there. Check us out. I spent some time on the video version for the show, and I'm pretty proud of those when they do come out. It's nice to have a visual companion when I talk about a lot of these games. But yeah, all right, let's get into the show. Of course, the first thing I want to cover here is SGF Live, the big kickoff event for this wonderful season, hosted by our Lord and Savior, Jeff Keighley. There were some fun reveals here. A lot of people were saying this was a disappointing conference, but I think the problem is when you go into SGF and you go into a Jeff Keighley hosted event, you want the big reveals. You want the crazy thing you didn't see coming. And I think it's just how things go where we get our hopes up. And, even Jeff came out before the show and he was like, he always tries to meet our expectations. And, this time I think he said he was in a Q&A and he gave the show an 8 out of 10, which, he's not going to say anything lower than an 8 because then people aren't going to watch. I think an 8 out of a 10 is a good answer. But for a viewer and someone who was a little more critical, that kind of translates to a 6 out of 10 in my opinion. So I have been pulling from different recap websites from different sources, and for this one, for SGF Live, we're going to be pulling from Sam Loveridge and the team over at Games Radar. So the first big announcement, they kicked the show off with it, was a LEGO Horizon Adventure, which is a LEGO version of the Horizon games on PlayStation, puts Aloy in a wonderful co-op world later this year across PC, PS5, and Nintendo Switch. And that last part we're going to come back to, but having that announced to Switch is kind of crazy. I'm actually very interested in this game. It looks pretty cool. I like the Horizon games, very passively. I've never completed one. They're high quality games, of course. They're great. The team at Guerrilla knows what they're doing, and they've really figured it out, especially with the second game. I've praised in the second game, Forbidden West, the facial animations. I think they're the best I've ever seen. And, I've enjoyed my time with those games, but they've never really hooked me in the way that I really wanted them to. I don't know if it's the combat or the mechanics of the world or the characters I'm not very interested in. I don't know. It's just never been one of my favorite franchises, even though on paper it should be, right? Giant robot dinosaurs, check. Who doesn't love those? Open world exploration, always a fan of that. Really cool traversal mechanics, which they amped up in the second game. I don't know. Part of it is I'm not a big fan of the weapons. I don't like using the bow and arrow in most games. I find it to be really boring. My friend Joe's listening. He's a big bow and arrow guy. To each their own, but I prefer a gun. And there are other weapons in Horizon. You've got the explosion slingshot and the tripwire, and the idea is you've got all these tools in your arsenal because you're like kind of a hunter, and you're supposed to use all these tools to your disposal to take down these behemoths. But it's never really clicked for me in the way that I wanted. Now, this LEGO game, the trailer was really great. First off, it looks stunning. It looks like they're kind of taking from the LEGO movies, that kind of LEGO animation. And I think that's a great call. I think that allows people to sort of have an entryway into this game. Because if they've seen those movies, they know what Legos talking and running around and doing actions are going to look like. It looks a little bit different than those classic Lego games we're all familiar with. Now, the biggest thing for me with this game is it looks like they're really doing that Lego humor, but in the Horizon world. And they kept Ashley Birch as Aloy, but it looks like they're letting her have more fun and sort of taking sort of not limiting her performance. Because that's a big problem a lot of people have with Horizon is the character of Aloy and how I don't want to, not muted, but sort of just held back she is. She doesn't really, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the character. She's not that interesting to me. I know people have different opinions on it, but that's one of the things that never really grabbed me about those games was that character. And it looks like if they're going to take it in a more Lego humor kind of route, then I really think her performance is going to shine. And I think her comedic timing is always great. So I'm really curious to see what they do with that here. And they showed what are the big dinosaurs? The T-Rexes, I think, are Thunder Jaws, maybe. They showed one of those. And, that looked pretty cool. They showed the boss fight with that. And the fact that it's co-op, always a plus. I don't know if it'll be online co-op because Lego games are real weird about that. Some games have it, some games don't. I hope it's online because I would like to not, I'm a big proponent of couch co-op, but I think you should have both if you can have online co-op and couch co-op. When the Lego Star Wars remastered games came out, or what was it, the Skywalker Collection, something, whatever they called it. Joe and I were super excited for that. And we did play that couch co-op when it initially came out, but I still have yet to finish that game. And I think if there was an online option, I would be more incentivized to do it because you can always play with someone that's not necessarily right next to you, but, wherever they may be. What else do I have for this game? Oh, yeah, the last thing here, it's on Switch. It's coming to Switch. So we've got a PlayStation game coming to a Nintendo console, or a PlayStation Studio game coming to a Nintendo console, which is pretty crazy. Is that going to open the door for more things coming to Switch in the future? Possibly. I'd like to see this crossover. Console exclusives I think they're becoming a thing of the past to a certain extent. We'll get to the Xbox conference later, and that kind of disproves what I just said, but it's nice to see more people being able to play more games. I think that's a positive across the board. Oh, I also want to preface, I should have said this in the top of the show. For all these conferences I'm going to be covering, I'm only talking about the stuff that I care about. Kind of selfish of me, but hey, I'm not going to talk about something I know nothing about or have no interest in. So always go check out these conferences yourself if you're interested in the full shows. But for me, this show is going to be sort of a best of highlight reel. So speaking of that, the next game we have up is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Rita's Rewind. This came out of nowhere, and the second they started playing that cool rock version of the Power Rangers theme song, which is by a band that I like. I'm going to look it up. Hang on. Okay, so they're called the Punk Rock Factory. They have various albums that are covers of all kinds of things. I mean, they got really popular when they did covers of Disney songs like Let It Go and stuff. But they did an album on old 80s shows. They did some games, Disney stuff. They're great. I'm a particular fan of their Power Rangers song, which was used in this trailer. It goes very hard. And I'm glad that they used it for this trailer because it was perfect. And This game was one of my biggest hype reveals, and like I said, it came out of nowhere. So it's coming from Digital Eclipse, who did a lot of these retro remakes. They did the TMNT Cowabunga collection, a bunch of other stuff. And it looks like Hasbro is getting in on the video game universe with this sort of Hasbro Rewind branding. It also includes a G.I. Joe game that's coming out that was shown at a different conference, but looks very similar to this Power Rangers game. They're both sort of going for that side-scrolling beat-em-up, which I played the TMNT Shredder's Revenge game, and I loved that game. And it looks like they're going for that again with a Power Rangers game. Perfect. It's a perfect idea, in my opinion. Like I said, love that TMNT game. Give me more of that. And in a Power Rangers